and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The fatal police shooting of 3 men in Durian Tunggal, Melaka has reignited a long-running national debate about police accountability. Now, while investigations are still ongoing into the shooting and the facts are still currently being established, the case, however, has raised some questions about whether internal probes are enough when the allegations involve the police themselves. So tonight on the show, we want to ask, how should Malaysia investigate deaths involving law enforcement? Joining me on the show is UK Menon, who is a barrister and the CEO of Espact, which is an academic collective providing advisory services on education and related areas. Menon, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. So when we have incidents like the fatal shooting in Durian Tunggal, why do you think they almost immediately revive calls for police reform? What is it that's triggering us as a nation?
Well, first of all, thank you, Melisa, for having me on the show. I hope I can answer the questions that you raised. The incidents like Durian Tunggal shooting trigger public concern because they occur against the backdrop of rising fatalities involving police action, police shootings. We hear of people being killed as a result of police involvement, police shooting. Even though this particular case is under investigation and we should not prejudge it, the broader pattern is well documented. In 2024, there were 35 police shooting incidents, according to the bar, across 11 states, including 75 individuals with 36 deaths. Swaram's reports show persistent deaths in custody, 32 cases between January 2022 and April 2023, and 46 deaths in custody in 2022. So when another fatal shooting happens, as in the Durian Tunggal case, it taps into a long-standing anxiety. And that's really the psychological aspect of the whole problem about systemic issues, the use of force, the absence of transparency, and the inadequacy of oversight. The public reaction is about one case, is not just about this one case, it's about the cumulative weight of many cases over many years. But you need to also address this against a broader background. In democratic societies, the police hold powers that ordinary citizens do not. Mm-hmm. If you went back into the history of the police, you find that the institution of an official police regime was preceded by private actors, people who looked after a particular community, people who were paid to look after a particular community. If you are, as I am, a cowboy film fan, you will know how small towns grew in the American West, and the first thing that happened was the appointment of a sheriff who had guns hanging on his hips, and he began to look after this. So the question is that when you give police people who you appoint to look after the safety and security of the country to keep us safe, but when those powers are used without limits, they can undermine the very rights that keep us free. This is the central dilemma. This is at the heart of policing.
Yeah.
Malaysia's Royal Commission recognized this tension between the need to have a security system and the need to protect the individuals against the system, but that was appointed to look after security. Mm-hmm. So it tried to rebalance the system so that enforcement is firm but always lawful, so the suspects are protected, not dehumanized.
Right.
And so the public trust becomes the foundation of public safety, because in a democracy, power must serve rights, not override these rights.
And it's a delicate balance to uphold, particularly because a lot of the conversation around independent police oversight has involved civilian oversight over police matters. And I think that's where the tension or the pushback for having something like the IPCMC, which was proposed previously, comes from. So I want to talk about this because it has been, we've debated independent police oversight for decades now. What do you think are the main political and institutional obstacles? What would an IPCMC, an independent police oversight mechanism, solve?
Yeah, the IPCMC, and sometimes these abbreviations get it.
Yeah.
The IPCMC was meant to be a fully independent body, the Independent Police Complaints and Misconduct Commission. This particular body was given the powers to look at several issues. The first of this was the weak internal disciplinary processes of the police force. Second, the lack of transparency in investigations. There was this argument, or rather this argument still is current, that the police require discretion in their investigative processes, in their functions. And this discretion cannot be challenged by anyone else. And that, if they made a decision, that is the decision that was taken at the time of the incident, and that should not be challenged. So this discretion was one of the matters that was discussed, and I'll come back to this later. Public distrust in police-led inquiries, that's the other factor that led to the establishment of this commission. And finally, the rising deaths in custody, in the deaths arising from police shootings, and a consistent report about the excessive force that is used in many instances. The IPCMC was meant to be a fully independent body. It's supposed to have not only disciplinary powers, but also investigative powers, something separate from the police hierarchy. It in fact had the power to prosecute, the power to decide on prosecute, to prosecute police officials that have misconduct, that have been involved in police misconduct. So this was in 2004, when the commission was established, they received over 900 complaints. There's over 900 complaints, and it was built. The proposal for this commission was built on all of these representations that were made to the commission, the Royal Commission at the time. And reading the Royal Commission, and if one has the patience to read it, it's a lengthy document, but it outlines some of the critical issues that we face in this country with respect to police investigation and police actions to deal with suspects.
Right. So can I just understand better? So we have currently the IPCC, the Independent Police Conduct Commission, and that was seen to be a watering down of the IPCMC. That was what most civil society wanted. Now, there are people who argue that a weak IPCC is better than no IPCMC. How do you see that? There are people who argue that, this is a contentious issue. So maybe instead of, we should be happy we have incremental reform rather than sweeping change, which is really hard to implement. What do you think?
Yeah, the IPCC, as you mentioned, which was really a kind of an alternative to to use a very broad term, to the IPCMC, which was proposed by the Commission. Now, the reasons for that you need to understand. First of all, why was there such objections to the establishment of the IPCMC? And the reasons are troubling by themselves, but I'll not go into it, because it'll take us in a different direction itself. But what is troubling about the fact that this was not implemented, the IPCMC was not implemented, was the political element in not implementing this, and that is the most worrying thing. The Independent Police Conduct Commission (IPCC) was established in 2022. It has only the power. It can only investigate and recommend actions. It cannot initiate anything on its own. It can say, look, we've investigated, we found this, and the information is passed on to the police to carry out any further disciplinary action if required. So that is what has the most of the civil societies have expressed dissatisfaction with that. They find the phrase that is commonly used and recently used again is that the IPCC is a toothless tiger, that is, or a dog that can bark but cannot bite. But your question was, is that better than nothing? I suppose. Well, if the Independent Police Conduct Commission can, in fact, be a little more proactive and be more public in their own actions and in their investigation, that would be an interesting, or rather, that would be an interesting alternative. Apart from that, you also, whenever you have these commissions, you must also look at who appoints the people to these commissions, and is the commission really independent? So those are the factors that have really brought the IPCC under brought criticisms against the IPCC.
Right. So we only have a few minutes left for our conversation, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to circle back to what you said earlier about the trust deficit in the police. Can I get you to elaborate what you mean by that?
Yeah, again, as I said, you need to go back. Growing up in this country, I remember the policeman was a friendly figure, the man who walked the beat in the small community where I lived in Imbiro. To see the policeman every evening or every morning gave us, it reassured us that the place is safe, that we have someone to rely on, to complain. And in fact, even now, if ever you're troubled, you hear a noise in the night, you feel there's an intruder in the house, what would you do? You would go to your telephone, dial 999. And you have full trust that the police will appear, that they will investigate what were your concerns and take action. But the problem, this trust deficit which we talk about, arises because of a number of instances where people are actually shot and killed, where where men held in custody die, where you have people jumping out of the windows, jumping out or falling out of the window in the process of investigation. So all of these instances, and they are reported extensively in the media, raise doubts about whether the police force is reliable. That not so much the ordinary individual like you and me, summoning the police to the 999, but people of certain communities, people in certain groups, people who are walking or working in late hours. These people are not sure that they are safe from the police. The question is no longer whether they can trust the police, but whether they are safe from the police. And
Right.
that is really the trust deficit.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to say one other factor, that while we are looking at the IPCC and the failure to implement the IPCMC, things have changed in a different area, and that is in the courts. In a recent decision, in a much publicized decision of dealing with the abduction of Pastor Cole, the man who was kidnapped and is still not discovered. The judge sitting in that case, Judge Su Kian Ju, in fact, laid down some important principles which I think might override or substitute for the lack of an independent body. You see, what he said is that first, there are 6 grounds on which he said that the police can be held accountable for their misconduct and for their failure to investigate. One was they said that you must go back to the fundamental constitutional right to life, and that if the police, in carrying out the investigations, are obliged to respect the constitutional right, and that constitutional right is available to everyone. I mean, you cannot be the judge and the executioner
Right.
if you're dealing with a suspect. So that's one important part. The second part was, and I won't go through the whole thing, is that they owe a duty of care. And that completely alters the scenario. The police investigating, the police carrying out their duties, do so as a result of a duty they owe to the public.
Right.
These two are things I think have fundamentally altered the way in which even the commission was initially structured, and the IPCC is now. And I think the courts may be the ultimate oversight body in instances where there is police misconduct.
Okay, thank you so much, Menon, for your insights. I appreciate your time. We're going to take a quick break here on the show. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the investigations into deaths involving law enforcement. This following the fatal shooting of 3 suspects during a police operation in Durian Tunggal, Melaka. Questions are now being asked, not just about what happened that night, but about how such cases are being probed. Joining me on the show is Rajesh Nagarajan, who is a human rights lawyer and the lawyer acting for the families of the 3 men killed during that shooting. So, Rajesh, thank you for being on the show with me today. Can I ask you at this stage, what are the families' primary concerns regarding to how the incident is being investigated?
Hi, Melisa. Thank you so much for having me. Now, the family's primary concern is that this investigation risks becoming another police-controlled inquiry into police killings. This is a model that has repeatedly failed to deliver accountability. When 3 individuals are shot dead in a single police operation, this is no longer a matter of operational judgment. It is a matter of whether the state has unlawfully taken a human life. Now, there is deep concern that without immediate independent oversight, the investigation will prioritize self-protection of the PDRM itself. The families are merely demanding an assurance that every aspect of this operation will be examined rigorously and without bias, with outcomes capable of leading to criminal charges, and that this matter will not just be another whitewashing.
Right. Okay, so talk to me about procedures. Help us understand, when there are cases involving police use of lethal force, what SOPs are apply? What investigative standards actually should apply?
Okay, the problem in Malaysia is that there are hardly any SOPs when it comes to shooting and killings by the police themselves. It seems like everything is hunky-dory, everything is normal. The police who are involved in the killing, they just go right back to duty. There is no proper investigation by a neutral third-party body. There is no SOP. That is the problem. And if you look at other countries, the minute there is a police shooting, the officers involved will immediately be put on leave pending investigation. And that is the proper way. Once they have been cleared, once it has been found that this shooting is a proper shooting, it is a shooting in self-defense, then they come back to active duty. But here in Malaysia, you don't have that.
Right. Okay, so in this case specifically, the Attorney General's Chambers has reclassified this case, right, under the I think Section 302 of the Penal Code. So help me understand the process here in terms of remand. Legally speaking, should there have been an arrest made for the police officers involved?
I think you can speak to any criminal lawyer, and the first thing that they will say is that the minute that a matter is classified as a Section 302 murder investigation, the first thing is the suspects will be remanded. And the first remand will usually be 6 to 7 days, and there'll be a subsequent remand for another 6 to 7 days, at the conclusion of which usually the suspects will be charged. But this remand is practically compulsory. It's always done. And it has to be done because this is a murder investigation. It's extremely serious. Lives have been lost.
Right.
But in this particular situation where the perpetrators are the police themselves, no remand has been done, no arrest has been done, nothing at all.
Right. Rajesh, can I ask you why the Durian Tunggal shooting has resonated with so many Malaysians? What do you see as why Malaysians are, civil society in particular, are really concerned about the way the investigations into this case is playing out?
I think that this is a matter that has always been in the public eye. For example, even back in 2009, a lady called Norizan Saleh was shot and almost died. Then in 2010, Aminul Rashid Hamzah, a mere 14-year-old boy, was shot and killed by the police. This is something that has always been in the collective mind of the public. And the police have been doing this for such a long time. And now in this particular case of Durian Tunggal shooting, there is audio evidence that the police were having a conversation with the three individuals for almost 10 minutes before they were shot dead. So this whole issue of self-defense is a non-issue. It's a complete fabrication by the police. There is no such thing as self-defense when the three of them had already been arrested and they were already detained before they were shot. And we have proof. We have the audio recording. So I think this is what upsets the Malaysian public the most. The fact that you can arrest someone and then you can shoot them execution style. And the fact that they were shot execution style also goes without any doubt whatsoever, because I spoke to the pathologist myself. The bullet for one of the individuals, it entered through his nose and it landed. The final destination was his heart. So the angle of the bullet was straight from the top to bottom, about 80 degrees. It is impossible for such an angle of a bullet to happen when it is self-defense. This is definitely execution style killing.
Rajesh, you mentioned a bit earlier the need for independent oversight of the police, and that is a question that Malaysia has been grappling with for many years, since 2004, 2005. So been decades now. Can you talk to me a little bit about the fact that without having that framework or system in place, victims or survivors are now having to go through the judiciary, having to ask the courts to provide that oversight for police accountability?
Yes, it's very unfortunate that we don't have a third-party body that provides for accountability. What we have is a watered-down, toothless IPCC. Now, what we asked for, what the Malaysians deserve, is IPCMC. But if you recall, Melisa, back in 2019, 2020, the police themselves objected vociferously to the formation of the IPCMC. Now, that itself makes no sense to me, because why should the police object to a third-party body that is overseeing them? If you have not done anything wrong and you are not going to do anything wrong, why are you so afraid of accountability? Why are you so afraid of being investigated by a neutral third party? No, they refuse. And now that you have a watered-down IPCC, you look at what the police are doing. They are running riot. They are going around shooting and killing Malaysians in public, even Malaysians without a police record, without a criminal record, and even individuals who have already surrendered, and still they're being shot and killed. Right. Now, what is going on?
Right. I remember the objections the police had to to founding an IPCMC, and one of the reasons they provided was the fact that civilian oversight over police matters or police duty is really difficult. And that's not just in Malaysia. I think elsewhere we have that conversation ongoing globally. How do you respond to that? That civilian oversight of the police is actually very difficult.
There is nothing difficult about civilian oversight at all. I mean, who is the IGP answerable to? He's answerable to the Home Minister. Isn't the Home Minister a civilian? And who is the Home Minister answerable to? The Prime Minister. Isn't the Prime Minister a civilian as well? What is so difficult about that? This is a non-issue. This is a fabricated, false issue that they have conjured out of thin air merely to not have any sort of oversight so that they can run riot.
Right. I spoke to UK Menon, who is a barrister, in my previous conversation for this show, and he brought up the Pastako ruling case, in which the judge had ruled that that authorities are vicariously liable for his enforced disappearance, for Pastako's enforced disappearance, and that there is a duty of care that the police have in protecting, or the police breached duty of care to Pastako and his family. Can you talk a little bit about that from a legal standpoint and how that might apply to cases of duty of care around police?
The police, they are governed by the Police Act 1967, which clearly states that they have a duty to all Malaysians when they are investigating a matter, when they have arrested a person. They are completely liable and responsible for the safety of that person. And the police, they are answerable to the Home Minister. So therefore, the Home Minister is vicariously liable for any actions of the police. So that is why it is important that the police, whenever they discharge their duties, they must discharge it with a proper level of duty of care to ensure that this person who is under their custody or who they are investigating does not suffer any prejudice whatsoever. They have their duty. They cannot arrest a person, take him to the balai and beat him up. They can't do that. They have a duty of care to that person.
Can I ask you, Rajesh, what's next for the case?
What this is a difficult question, because what comes next, or what ought to come next, is the criminal prosecution. The murderers who shot these three individuals, they ought to be charged in court under section 302 of the Penal Code, but that does not seem to be happening, despite the fact that the murders occurred on November 24. It's been more than 1.5 months now, and nothing is moving. So what comes next is that there will be more protests, there will be more letters, and the lawyers and the families will be approaching the members of parliament, they'll be approaching the government, they'll be approaching the Prime Minister, demanding, seeking, even begging that justice be done, that the murderers of these three individuals be held to account.
Rajesh, thank you so much for being on the show with me. That was human rights lawyer Rajesh Nagarajan there, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.